It's Friday. You're tuning into the wrap up, of course. This is a show produced by the Asians Represent crew, hosted by myself, Steve, Agatha, and Daniel, joined by a lovely guest today, Kiana. We stream every Friday, so if you're tuning in live, amazing. If you're catching us on YouTube on whatever day it is, thank you for still tuning in. Appreciate and love your support. But tonight is a very special episode, I think. I'm very excited about it. I've been wanting to do this forever. But we're going to be diving into Candlekeep Adventures, or Candlekeep Mysteries, excuse me. The naming conventions across WotC stuff is... Anyways.
No comment.
No comment on that. But we are going to dive into that. Agatha and I are going to... We prepared some questions. We prepared some things that actually we really, really want to know. We have our chat up as well, so if anyone has any questions, drop those in. And if there's time, we'll absolutely dive into those. But before we do that, for anyone who has not had a chance to tune in or listen from you, I would love to, Kiana, just for you to introduce yourself and who are you?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kiana. My pronouns are she and they. I'm known as Kiana S on the internet. I do a bunch of stuff, mostly online, mostly TTRPG related. I'm a streamer, co-producer of It's All to See Games. I am the co-curator of the TTRPG Safety Toolkit, and I'm a writer and designer. I do a lot of self-published stuff, but obviously I am also a freelance writer, and I am one of the contributors for Candlekeep Mysteries. So we're just hanging out over here.
Hey, Kiana, don't forget any winning.
Yes, that's true. I do forget that. I don't know if I ever told y'all when the TTRPG Safety Toolkit was any nominated. My fellow castmates over on Soft Sweet Games would always introduce me as any nominated, and then when I won, it's any winning Kienna Shaw, and that was every single time my name was spoken in that one episode. It's any winning Kienna Shaw, and I was just like, please.
That's so wholesome. I love that.
Well, I kept saying it's like best-selling author Steve.
Daniel had to drill that into my head and just like
because I knew
imposter gremlins.
I knew you were gonna be like, oh no. That's why I was like best-selling author.
So
Any
I'm happy to say
any winner Steve.
And the last 2 months, I have moved the Any to this room. So every time I look myself in in the camera, I actually see the Any. I refuse to let whatever brain gremlins say doesn't exist, because it exists. It is physically here.
I told y'all my mom framed my Any, right?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
I saw the picture of it. It's so cute.
Sorry, my partner's grabbing it for me.
Oh,
my mom framed my Any. My mom framed it.
So cute. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yo, I'm gonna tell my mom to frame mine.
My mom framed my Any. I still have Jade's. I have to get it to Jade.
Maybe you should frame it too.
frame Jade's.
Give it to her framed.
I can't wait to just meet all y'all and like have a dinner or something, and
Aww.
Jade finally, and my feels.
Every time we play a game with Jade, I love seeing you, Steve, interact with Jade, because you're just like,
I feel bad because like I know like fandoms and like
so
fanboying moment it, and like I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, but like I have a lot of feels.
No, you do it in a way that makes people comfortable.
I hope so. I'm glad to hear
You
that,
do.
because like I'm very mindful of like how damaging it can be for people to like really want your attention all the time.
Aw, Steve.
yeah. Yeah.
Cosplay scenes and stuff, right? Like
But
I see it consume people. Sorry, Agatha, please go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the reason why I got to say it's Friday is for the wrap up is because Daniel, you are a guest today because you also wrote on Candlekeep.
You're in the guest seat.
It's the first time I am actually a guest on Asians Represent.
Yeah, how does it feel to not be the host?
To not be the host?
Yeah, how does it feel to have segues but not say them?
The whole time I was like, see, I'm still in host mode because I was like thinking, because when I know I want to say something, I'm like waiting for the segue to come. So I'm like, okay, they're gonna say this. Oh, that's a good segue, and I'll like jump on it. But this whole time I was like, no, don't say anything, and then I did it. So, it feels honestly when you and Steve, I was very impressed because you and Steve came up with a whole bunch of questions, and we did like a panel lines and veils before we went live. So like no, I y'all are killing it. I'm excited to just sit back and learn from Kiana. Really
Amazing.
Not just me.
well, okay. Here's the thing. I want to know all about your adventure.
I know my adventure has been very secret.
It's been super secret, and
very secret.
It's like everybody's talking about like I don't even like hyping myself up. Like my adventure is getting a lot of attention, and there are like a couple of others that are getting a ton of attention, but I don't know anything about yours.
Yeah, no, there hasn't been a lot of press about mine, so this will be a first. Y'all will get
Ooh, exclusive.
Yeah. I will say that because it's not out yet as a book, Daniel and I do have to be careful about what we share. But we will try to answer as many questions as people have.
Well, let's just dive into it then. Let's not beat around it. So I'm going to start off by Kiana. Can you give me as much as you're comfortable doing, given any agreements you've signed? What is your adventure?
Yeah. So essentially, the premise is that it's a level 11 to 15 adventure, which is much higher than I usually construct for. So that was fun. But basically, a bard, a harper bard, is corrupted by something, and is therefore locked away into a demiplane prison until he can be cured. The time has come for his cure to happen, and the adventurers are asked to go and administer it. And so they have to go hop into this demiplane prison and go free him. But there's some weird shit happening in there. There's something big in there, which I'm not going to spoil, that changes this demiplane, which is supposed to be this nice place called Wisteria Vale, into something very complicated and messy and lots of nothing is what it seems in there.
That's so unlike you to write an adventure where nothing is what it seems and it's messy.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so it involves the Harpers, which is cool. And yeah, there's basically, if you like, general kind of Fey bullshit,
if you like Fey bullshit,
there is no actual Fey wild stuff, but if you like that kind of like reality warping stuff, this is the kind of adventure. It was described in a review as Truman Show-esque, which is exactly one of my touchstones.
Okay.
Oh.
I was gonna say, because it's top of mind. Like I have like a WandaVision energy coming from here, kind of like.
I was re-looking at it, and it does have
Daniel.
There is a WandaVision vibe that obviously was unplanned because I did this before WandaVision came out. So,
right.
But there is that vibe to it. So
I think honestly that idea that being watched and like being on for people is not that groundbreaking. Every time we see it, it resonates really, really heavily, and I think there's a reason for that. But I totally understand why people would be like, "Oh, it's like WandaVision," but in actuality, this is just kind of lived-in experience.
How I ended up. So yeah, so my basic first concept when I was coming to it was like, yeah, the Truman Show meets Feywild. And obviously it evolved a lot from there. It's no longer related to the Feywild, but there's again, reality warping and shifting is definitely a big part of it.
Sweet. So yeah, I feel like I'm very curious about like, how did you come up with that idea to start with? Like when you were approached to like, hey, I want to write an adventure for our new supplement. Like what were you, like, how did you start that brainstorming process?
Yeah, so I mean, Dale can corroborate this. We were approached and they were said, make a mystery.
Yep.
The rest is open.
Make a mystery starts in Candlekeep.
Yeah, make a mystery. It starts in Candlekeep. Here's your tier, like your tier of adventure that it should be. Go. And it's like, okay. And so it's interesting. I don't write a lot of mysteries. Mysteries are a form that I admire anyone who can do it well, but I struggle with. Just and not in like a. I obviously do have like secrets and mysteries that happen in my campaigns or my games and stuff where people have to find out stuff, but it's never the central thing. Right? Like it's like you have to go defeat this villain, and along the way you'll find out what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Right.
Right. That tends to be my own case, or like, there's some weird stuff happening over here. How's it going to continue to unravel? But I'm not like I'm not an Agatha Christie.
I mean, here's also the challenge is like D&D in general. No edition of D&D is designed with solving mysteries, right? And I think that was the challenge,
Yes.
right? Because when you have characters who are supposed to be solving mysteries and supposed to be finding clues, right? You have to succeed on your dice rolls, right? Or your dice rolls have to be made meaningful. And there are systems that do this really well, to be quite frank. Like, look, like Gumshoe.
Gumshoe's incredible.
Is
Call of
designed for
Cthulhu's
that.
incredible. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
They give you're encouraged to have narrative momentum as you move forward to try to find clues, right? Or there are mechanisms built into the game that allow you to progress without having to roll dice. But rolling dice is so central to D&D that failure can basically stop all of your narrative progression.
So yeah, they basically said write an adventure that is a mystery. So what is the difference then between an adventure where there are things that you will discover which are mysterious, and a mystery? Like how did you structure it then? This is for either of you.
For me, it was a whodunit.
yeah.
Whodunit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So mine was like, see, Kiana, yours is like you're like, this is how I did it. It was super nuanced. For me, it was like they were like, do this. It's a mystery, and I'm like sitting, like all three of you know, like have that couch, and I was just like sitting on my couch listening
Yeah.
to the Wu-Tang Clan, and I was like, yeah, this would be really cool. I mean, this do an adventure.
So yeah, Daniel, why don't you walk us through? I know for a lot of the viewers here, they've already heard you talk a little bit about kind of your adventure and kind of what you went through there. But how about you kind of lay the groundwork for me, some YouTubers who haven't caught up yet? What is your adventure, and kind of how did you come across and think about this mystery?
Yeah, because I think mine, the whole nature of the mystery, to go back to Agatha's question, makes it very different from Kiana's, right? Kiana, yours is like, this thing has happened, and there is this established sort of set piece. There's this bard who's trapped here, and when you go to try to finally free them, things have changed, right? For me, it was like the complete opposite, and mine starts with a murder. There's been a murder. These people have infiltrated Candlekeep. They've killed a whole bunch of the scholars and guards, and they've ripped the pages out of a book, and they've stolen them. And this stuff is kind of already out there. People have written reviews on it, so I can say this. But like, people have stolen these pages, and these pages are basically esoteric knowledge on how to craft a magical item. And it's specifically a monk item, because I thought like, I was listening to Enter the Wu-Tang, and I was like, oh, what if a martial artist had these dope gloves where they could literally steal souls?
Yeah.
And so I was basically like, okay, so there's this, and this is one of the challenges. So basically, the players have to go retrieve these pages, right? And the mystery in mine is, well, why do they want to retrieve these pages? What is going on here? Mine is very much an action adventure mystery.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they don't actually know what these like magical gloves do, but
Well,
they
the prompt to get them there is like, well, what? Because when we were making it, it's like, well, the first thing is always like, well, how do the players? What is the plot hook? How do the players actually come upon this mystery? Like, I'd be curious as to yours, Kiana, because for mine, it's like, my two things were like, okay, the big one is, well, if players come to Candlekeep looking for knowledge about chi, that was mine. And well, the monks were like, oh yeah, there's this book, and it tells you all about chi and traditional medicine. But then there's this thing that's happened, and if the players want to know more about chi and they want to know about these forbidden techniques and this forbidden craft, then they have to go and retrieve the pages.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. For mine, this is where the Harpers come in. Like, because this is a Harper Bard, it was kind of like, okay, so the Harpers have asked the players to go and do this task. And it's mostly because Candlekeep is such an interesting location where, like, you know, you have to bring a book that's not in the library yet to enter into it. Like, you have this whole like process to it, and then it's just like, well, I mean, I don't think the Harpers is going to want to go and do this themselves because they're busy dealing with evil everywhere else. Like, here you go, adventurers, do this favor for us. And it ties them to the Harpers, who's a very cool organization in the space. So that kind of was, originally it was just like you can stumble across this book and it will suck you into this demi-plane. Have fun. But for a more concrete hook, the Harpers were brought in, and I think it was the right move there. Yeah.
Were you both already fans of the Forgotten Realms and the Faerun narrative before coming on, or did you like have to do research? Did WotC give you, Wizards of the Coast give you a primer or whatnot? Because you mentioned the Harpers several times, and although I happen to know who they are, I'm sure a lot of people out there are kind of like, huh? And even Candlekeep itself, this whole like process they have, I'm sure that's not, you know, widely distributed knowledge across the D&D player base.
Yeah, so actually in our original, like, hey, write for us thing, we were told that we weren't tied to Faerun and the Forgotten Realms. Like, the only thing is just, obviously we have Candlekeep, and we were given a little like, here's what Candlekeep is. Here's what you need to know about it. But otherwise we were told pretty explicitly that it didn't have to be tied to the Forgotten Realms. Mine just happens to be for the beginning, and I happen to know the Harpers ahead of time, and thankfully they do have 5e canon, so it wasn't too hard to go find stuff about them. But you know, the actual adventure itself is pretty separated out because it takes place in a demi-plane. And I know, Daniel, you kind of went, nah.
I was like, nah. Right in the Sword Coast, because mine takes place right there.
Yeah.
Like I personally was a fan. Like, I know Steve, you, myself, and Jeremy, we talked about how we love R.A. Salvatore, and we've kind of come into R.A. Salvatore at different times. Like Jeremy, more recently, you and I, for a very long time. So like, I've always been a fan of that part of the Forgotten Realms. Like, when they did Rime of the Frost Maiden, I was like, yo, this is dope. Right?
Yeah, right. People were reading like Twilight and like other
Wizards, the Crystal Shard.
Yeah, and I'm just like reading Salvatore. I'm like, hey, I want to know how Wolfgar is going to fucking muscle his way through this next adventure.
Is Wolfgar your favorite character in that?
No, I hate Wolfgar.
I love Wolfgar. Her bow, so cool.
I have mixed feelings because of the romance that Salvatore chose to write between a mass-presenting person who's hundreds of years old, who mentored and raised a small girl.
Yeah, it's a little strange. For me, I've always been like, I love her magical bow because I grew up shooting bows. And so like, I was like, oh, that's so dope. And I always found that like Regis's crystal was always really icky to me because I don't like magical items that like take control. They take agency away from other characters. So it's kind of like, oh.
My favorite character is Artemis Entreri,
the assassin.
The assassin. But honestly, I really resonate with Wolfgar because there's a scene where a portal is closing and like magic has stopped working and like the portal's closing. So Wolfgar fucking rolls up his non-sleeves and he steps in the portal and he just holds it open by pure muscle. And I'm like, that's amazing. You just fucking just told reality no, but also my muscles.
But that's such a D&D thing. So for me, when I was like learning to play D&D and reading these novels, I was like, oh, he's very explicit with like how he describes the violence and the action. And I was like, this just sounds like he's transcribing their D&D game. And one of his players was like, I hold open the portal and rolled a 20. And then, yeah.
That's absolutely what it kind of feels like.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I could talk about like just Salvatore for a long time, but we're not here for that. We're here for Candlekeep.
So I have more questions about like D&D. Oh, sorry, Steve. Did you?
I gotta go for it. I want to dive into this. I'm still like gushing a little bit, so a break is good for me.
Okay, but the thing is, like, you said something about the Harpers. I'm like, I don't know who the Harpers are, but that's very cool. But my question is, like, so are there things, like, about designing specifically for D&D that either makes it easier or harder? I mean, like, Daniel, I know you said that it's, like, the system is not, like, a mystery-based system, but is there anything else that was, like, is it easier to have like already a lot of lore that you can kind of set?
So I've got one that was it changed very dramatically when I wrote this. So Kiana and I got hired January of 2020. I think it was January 2020. I had previously written for Wizards the previous summer. I wrote I wrote a Chinese thing. That's all I can say. I don't think it's ever going to come out, but I wrote a thing. And they hired both of us, and they're like, here's this adventure. And I was like, cool, Kung Fu, I'm going to do this. And I actually originally made mention to Karatur a couple of times in the manuscript. And then, Steve and I started reading Oriental Adventures.
Well, that small thing, yeah.
That small thing, that undertaking. And, we started reading Oriental Adventures. And up until then, like, my only real interaction with East Asian D&D was Rokugan, which I was like, right? And so I was like, okay, the challenge was like, I want to make sure that people who are super hardcore into D&D play my adventure because they like the world of D&D. And I wanted to add Asian themes to D&D. So me in January was like, okay, these villains, comes from Karatur, their show, this is what kind of fits into the lore. Then we read Oriental Adventures, and that whole thing, that several month period of you and I receiving a ton of internet abuse happened. And I basically messaged the editor that was assigned to me, Hannah Rose, and I was like, hey, take out all of the mentions of Karatur from here. And she was just like, okay, done. It's gone. Karatur was gone, and then we just put like east of Faerun. So for me, the challenge was less of like working with the system, and by the system I mean 5e, and more of kind of balancing my own feelings about the way Asia was portrayed in D&D, and how I would like Asian characters to be portrayed. So the compromise that I kind of came to was, these villains are from show. They're show villains, right? And I kind of kept that compromise because in D&D, show means Chinese. Like, it's like Agatha. We're reading the Karatur campaign setting now, and show is Chinese. So I was like, okay, I want these villains to be Chinese. Now, I realized that, like, you know what? Like, I'm writing Chinese characters into D&D, and automatically they're villains. And this was something that I was worried about. I was worried that people were going to say, oh, Daniel is just creating Asian villains. But in my head, I kind of had to think, like, well, you know what? I wanted to create Asian villains because there are going to be Asian villains. There are going to be Asian heroes. There are going to be Asian villains. And there are going to be Asian people who kind of fit in between. And so far, all the Asian villains that we've seen have been stereotypes, and I wanted to create villains that had nuance to them. I wanted to create villains who were exiled from show and also didn't have a home in the Sword Coast, right? I wanted to have that sort of that story of the diaspora from East Asia, and the clash of cultures and worldviews in the Sword Coast. So for me, the challenge was kind of making sure that all of that came through in the writing. And so I've been like stressed for like the past like 5 months, because I was like, are people going to get this, or are people going to think that I ran with stereotypes? but based on the early reviews, people got it. But yeah, I think the challenge is for me, since I decided to do the opposite of Kiana and set it hard, like right there in the Sword Coast, in the established D&D world, was making sure that A, it fit enough so that people would want to engage with it, and B, it, didn't play to all of the stereotypes that we've talked about on this channel.
Gotcha. But I love the idea of like your diaspora and your trauma is expressed and it makes you the villain, and maybe like that causes a lot of harm. I feel that. I know what you're talking about.
Honestly, like I would encourage, I want to see people play the adventure and side with the villains.
Gotcha.
Right.
A lot of that understandable villains type of situation. Like, I get this.
I get this, but also I need to stop this.
This has to stop. It's the cool motive, still murder kind of thing. Like I can agree with. I can see where you're coming from. I don't agree with your message.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe you don't agree with the villains, and maybe you don't agree with the folks at Candlekeep, and you just keep whatever happens. You keep those pages for yourself.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Actually, that brings me to an idea. So someone mentioned in chat, Sailor actually mentioned in chat, Daniel, how does your adventure kind of like allude to the Shaw Brothers type of films? Like, what are the things that happen there? And Kiana, I'm going to ask you the same thing about Truman Show, but
Kiana, do you want to go
stay
first?
tuned.
Kiana, do you want to go first since I was just talking?
I'm cool either way.
You go ahead.
Yeah, so Kiana, on your adventure, you mentioned like Truman Show is one of your inspirations, as well as like other stuff that happened to maybe fall in coincidentally. How do you see like that kind of stuff just manifest in your adventure / mystery?
Yeah, so again, a lot of it comes down to the nothing is what it seems. And just like I got into very interesting thinkings about what does a demiplane look like and what is the logistics of a demiplane in order for it to exist. If it's self-contained, like it's a self-contained village, essentially. Wisteria Vale is a self-contained demiplane village here. There is a real-life counterpart in the Forgotten Realms. But there's this replica of it that's made into a prison. And how does that work? How does that function? Especially if you're trying to keep this corrupted bard entertained and pleasant and not like super angry at you for doing this. And so it's just this whole like, I had to do a lot of thinking about like, what does the people here look like? Are they actually people? Like, are we, what does it look like for bringing in outside commerce? Because like, if you're in an isolated demiplane that nobody can get in or out of, how does that work? Yeah. How does it sustain itself with someone just kind of leaving it and then walking away until you can come back and go, all right, let's go and bring back her friend from being evil. So like Truman Show was a really good, like, again, it was like part of my basic concept, but it really actually helped me kind of think about that stuff, because I was like, what does it look like for someone to create a constructed environment? What type of stuff do they have to think about? What do they have to like? What types of roles and lines do the people have to play in here to make this work and a believable, place, despite its artificial roots? So it was a very interesting challenge. So that's where I see a lot of that stuff again, like the reality warping and then the big secret, what else they'll find in there, kind of throws all of that and turns it on its head and starts messing with the rules of this place. So it's very, very fun and interesting to think about.
I love that I asked you one question and you answered with 10 other questions that were rhetorical, but also what a good mystery.
I just want to see. I want to see the map that you drew.
It's actually a super vanilla map. Fun thing about the map, I'm really bad at distances and lengths and stuff. Like I cannot visualize in my head how things are, so I kind of just went like this.
I think that adds to it, right? Because it's a constructed place by probably a couple people who aren't civil engineers.
Yeah, like it's extremely just like generic village.
Yeah.
You're
Love
just
it,
like,
love it.
yeah, that's and for a high level adventure, that's very odd because most people, when you're getting to level 11 to 15, you're going off to weird places. Like you're going off to like, let's go see this like pyramid dungeon. Let's go to this underwater temple. And I'm just like, have a tiny village. Have
Yeah.
fun.
I love that.
But that's the mystery, right? It's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is going on here? Like,
Yeah.
I want to know, like, if it's like the Truman Show, because, you know, in the movie, they're always like, they find ways to make sure he doesn't go to these places, right?
Yeah. And
like,
the good
how
thing
does that
about
work in your
demiplanes
adventure?
is that you have magic here.
Mhm.
And like, and the thing is that some of it is like a suspense of disbelief. Like obviously the dude knows that he's in a prison. Like this, he would put in here, he knows this is a fake place. But like this is it's extremely like a lot of how I do like the you can't leave is that it's just like Feywild places. You walk and like Alice in Wonderland, you walk in one direction and eventually you pop up on the other side.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Pac-Man problem.
I think it's interesting because it's like, if you were trapped in a demiplane and you were very powerful, what would you do? And you would obviously like make it your own.
Yeah.
Right. You would just, I don't know how long they were trapped there, but I would just like make it my own. Like, it's like, well, I guess I can just like mess around in here with my magic.
Yeah. And then obviously because of prison, there's like certain limitations here, like teleportation magic doesn't lead you out of it. Like you can only teleport or any of that type of stuff within the demiplane, which includes the players. So the players are stuck there until they can figure out what to do.
Right.
So Daniel, for yours,
Mhm.
or I know it's very much based in Shaw Brothers, how do you design it so it feels like Shaw Brothers? And if you wouldn't mind, maybe start with, because I saw it in chat a little bit, like what does it mean to be a Shaw Brothers, you know,
For me, it's
representation?
not just like the Shaw Brothers. It's just all of the old kung fu movies that I watched with my dad.
Mhm.
Right? It's like going to Blockbuster, going to Rogers Video, and like renting a movie every week and watching these things. So for me, it was really like I wanted, and you and Agatha know this from playing Quest with me. Like, I love set pieces. Like I love set pieces. So for this one, it was just like, I want these really cool set pieces that are not only going to be narratively evocative for the players exploring them, but also really interesting for fighting in them. There's, I'm just thinking, yeah, there's a tiny little bit of body horror. There is a place that is like acrobatic and cool, but then there's also like the temple. So like, you know, action movies are all about those set pieces, right? When you watch a good action movie, you think, okay, well, where can all of this really zany stuff happen? I think one of my favorite like action movie set pieces is actually not in like a Shaw Brothers like kung fu movie, but in Jackie Chan's Police Story, the first Police Story movie. And in like the climax of this movie, there's a fight scene in a shopping mall, and there are all of these really cool set pieces where Jackie could show off his stunt skills. So for me, I wanted to create set pieces where players could show off their narrative creativity and their mechanical skills and how they can exploit the mechanics of the game. So that was one, right? Like Asian action cinema is all about the set piece. Like two, I wanted to really make this about knowledge, right? I wanted to make this about that clash of like intellectuals, right? What happened to Bak Mei? Why was he exiled? Why did he form his own school? Is literally like, this is a rogue kung fu school. So for me, it's like set pieces and the sort of the debate over the ownership of martial knowledge and esoteric knowledge associated with it.
Yeah.
So I have a question about like, because you were saying, for example, like you wanted it to be about knowledge, and is there a way? Like, did either of you feel like you have to design a way around, like, oh, I'm just gonna go and just kill everything or like hit everything, which is something that you can do in D&D, right? Like, and I feel like sometimes, at least in the games that I played in, sometimes that seems to be the struggle for DMs, where they have like a lot of story, but then it's not engaged with, because all we're doing is we're going and killing whoever needs to be killed and getting the loot and like getting out of there. So like, because these are mysteries, right? So that's what I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah, I mean, like if people want to skip the entire middle act of my adventure, like I'm all for it, right?
Okay.
For me, like my intention with writing something is never to write something and expect the players to go word for word, right? Like I want people to say like, okay, I really like the Order of the Immortal Lotus. Let me homebrew this entire monk school, right? And just go with that. I really like the villain. Or, you know what, like, you know, we get these stolen pages, and instead of taking it back, I'm going, and for this reward that they offered me in Candlekeep, I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to make this item. So like, I mean, there is a challenge of like having a narrative flow, right? Like the way I wrote the Book of Inner Alchemy is one way that you can progress through the story. It is not the way to go through the story. And I think that more GMs and designers need to understand that, right?
Right.
Like, we are writing toolkits. We are not writing an adventure that everybody's going to experience the same way.
Yeah. So like so one of my other inspirations for my adventure was Shakespeare. I'm a big theater nerd. And Shakespeare is one of the old masters of we're going to pull some bullshit here, and perception of each other's characters are not going to be what they seem. Like, think of all his comedies, like Midsummer's Night's Dream, 12 Nights. Like, all of those are just like, let me just mess with the perception of everybody, and then everything will fall apart into like a fun mess that eventually gets resolved. But I took and my original concept of the bard character was as a playwright, and so I developed this out as a 3-part like three act story in the sense of a play. But where the interesting thing was is that the progression of the acts are linear, but the what happens in each act, and this is generally how I do my stuff anyways, is pretty open. Like it's not linear in each act. Like I can go over here and go do this, and in one way or another I will come to the start of the next act. Obviously what you've done will have some impact. I try not to railroad, and like Daniel said, it's all toolkit related. But yeah, like I mean, with my adventure specifically, you cannot, you could try to kill your way through everything, and there's a way to end the thing where everything is dead, and it's still a satisfying ending. But to get there would be very difficult to just go on a murder spree, and part of that is because I have had to create a constructed city, a constructed village, and go, how does this work? What happens when someone dies? What happens in a demi-plane when someone dies? What does that do here? So I've had to think about a lot about all that stuff.
See, I would have done. What I would have done for that is I see if I had this demi-plane with all these like villagers or people trapped in it. Is like if they die, they become, there's this like shimmering wall that kind of like a dome that covers the whole thing, and they become a part of the dome, and there's these like spectral people trapped in the dome, and over time,
oh my god,
it's just like all these people. This dome is made of spectral people, and it becomes more and more opaque.
That's really really interesting.
So fucking dark.
All the different adventurers who have failed, or all the people who have failed to get him out.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So yeah, so in terms of designing for people not murder hoboing their way through it, I think there you do have to think about the fact that because this is a mysteries book and it's literally named Candlekeep Mysteries, we are going to assume there is going to be some buy-in for people engaging with it to go, this is a mystery, and we're generally designing to not be, kill your way through everything. And I mean that generally is, comes down to setting tone at the beginning of it, and as also at the end of the day, you have to realize that you're designing for people to do certain things, and you can't always design for people to not do a certain thing. And if they're gonna willfully break what you want to do, they're gonna break it. Like
you
made a really good point. Like there's the buy-in, there's the expectation, like, oh no, A mystery. I guess we'll solve it.
Yeah. Huh.
Right.
This is weird.
That's
We
strange.
should get involved.
Who could have done this? I guess we're here. We can help.
This
Yeah.
might be designed as a who could have done this.
Who has done it? Who has done it?
So I feel like I'm getting what I cared the most about was basically getting like inclusive knowledge of like your adventures and like get the sneak peeks. But also part of this interview that I was really interested in was to know more about kind of the overall kind of Wizards of the Coast process and just hearing more about that. I'm sure a lot of it you just can't really talk about because it's not super professional to go into the nitty and go into the details of that. But if there's anything you can share about kind of the overall process, even at a high level, I'd be really interested in just hearing how that went.
I want to have it known that the map,
Okay.
the final art for the map is very close to the art that I drew, but I'm not getting an art credit. I helped that cartographer with my map. But I think the big takeaway here is that we were given like a lot of freedom within reason to do what we wanted to do. I think that, we had a lot of access to the WotC staff to ask them for help with certain things. Like, I need some help with these stat blocks, or like, lore wise, hey, can I do this? Are these people allowed to die in your narrative? Can I do that? And I mean, we were very heavily involved in this. So like, we did the drafts and we sent in the maps and everything. Whether or not our map drafts were good is a completely different story. But perhaps when, Candlekeep is out, I'll tweet my draft of my map.
The shade to your cartographer.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Like, I'm just very proud that the cartographer thought my map was okay. Because I stressed over that map.
I did. I stressed over mine too, and mine was probably much simpler.
Literally, like my partner is asleep. I'm in bed, and I'm like hunched over in bed with my tablet, like drawing in the darkness. I'm just like, okay, and then this is where the monks are training, and this is where they sleep. And, yeah. But I definitely think that like the entire process of Candlekeep, the thing I was most surprised about was how much freedom we had. Like, very surprised.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because, again, like we've talked about, we came in and we're basically just given, hello, make an adventure, starts in Candlekeep, go. I'm like, okay. And in some ways that's a blessing and a curse. Because what ends up happening is that, especially since there are a lot of diverse writers on this project, where, we all have different ideas of what a D&D story could be, which doesn't always align with the general trajectory of what the types of adventures are usually found in products. And so there is a bit of that friction because, we come in with, go wild. And we're like, okay, but now we need to rein it in. We need to bring this back down to some form of, cohesive reality with the rest of the product. So that was definitely kind of an interesting process to have like this kind of like go wild and now let's ground this again. And that's actually where I added in the Harpers. I didn't have the Harpers originally in my first concept. They had to come in to help kind of ground the adventure and bring like I said, my original hook was just whoops, into a demi-plane you go. And we needed something to tie it in better. And so we used the Harpers as like a plausible group that would want you to go and do this for them. And it kind of went from there. So yeah, so I mean, it's also interesting because most of us were completely new to Wizards as a company, or as freelancers for the company, or coming in doing adventure writing for the first time. And it's interesting. It's great that they're doing this, that they're bringing new voices, like we're seeing with Candlekeep Mysteries, we're seeing with the new Ravenloft book that's coming out. We're bringing new voices, but obviously there there are bumps in the road that comes with trying to figure out, okay, let's bring people into our process and have to teach them what our process is and set those expectations. So that's really interesting to kind of look at it and go, huh.
Yeah,
I
think
wanna...
that you.
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve. No.
No. I was gonna move on, but Daniel, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, there was one thing that I thought was a really good move, and I don't want to name names. This is a positive thing. Before I begin it, this is a positive thing. I don't want to name names or anything. But a WotC staff member reached out to me and was like, "Hey, Daniel, can you check the character art for me? I have, as a non-Asian person, I have my thoughts, but I would like to hear your feedback." And then I was like, "Can I be real with you?" And they were like, "Yeah, okay." And I was like, "Here." And I didn't think that I would be given, like, have any say over that. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, you talk about that in your interview with Inverse.
Yeah.
And I think that I had mentioned this to you. I can only imagine the kind of anxiety someone might feel going back to an artist and being like, actually, I have some criticism about how you've presented these people, and I think there's room for changes. Like, to me, that's like I'm sweating bullets, like I'm through my shirt, like I can't do that.
I'll be straight up with you. My email was, they don't look Asian enough. Like, they don't look Asian at all. So let's change this. And I am very happy. I know 2 pieces of art have already kind of are on the internet to find. The final character art is actually my favorite one.
It looks so good.
The final
and
really,
so
really good.
They look Asian the way that Asian people think of Asians, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that's my uncle down there. like,
Yeah, and like that's what I'm like. For me, I'm happy with two things about Candlekeep. The first one is, like, I had a chance to write a thing that included art that portrayed Asians in a different way than they have ever been portrayed in an official D&D product. So, like, I'm happy that my writing allowed for this art to be there. And the second thing, like, another reason why I specifically chose to put it in the Sword Coast was because of all the flack that you and I got, Steve, over Oriental Adventures, being like, oh, but this isn't in here, and this isn't in the Forgotten, this isn't in Faerun, this isn't here, this isn't there, whatever. For me, I was like, I'm gonna set an Asian as fuck adventure right in the Sword Coast, right? So you could leave Baldur's Gate and go and have this, like, kung fu adventure, which I really wanted to do. I also wrote a thing about Chi, and I'm assuming now that that's canon.
Yeah, no assumption. It is. It's in a Wizards of the Coast book, so it's canon. And, like, if people say it's not, well, at this point they're just wrong.
Well, they're wrong, exactly. So I wanted to be like, yo, everyone's got Chi.
Yeah. If I can gush more about that art, because in that Inverse interview, I'll put a link in chat. You can see some of the pieces of art. You have a front presenting person who you never see Asian women represented that way. And I was very happy about it, because I'm like, oh my God, like, that's what my aunt looks like one of them. And, like, that's really refreshing to see. Second, Bok Mei, who is the Pai Mei, like, person. Pai Mei is always played by a younger masked Asian, with just, like, beards pasted onto his face. And it's like, that's cool. Like, that's fine. I get it. I know what that is. But Bok Mei in your drawing looks like an older Asian, like a mass presenting Asian elder. And, like, I see it, and I see, like, other things that are really small, but it makes my brain think, like, oh my God, that's just my uncle with white hair and a beard. Like, I'm super into that, and that was very special. So your artist really knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, I was super happy with that. I want to see Kiana's so bad.
I know.
It's a secret until it comes out on Tuesday.
And here's the thing, like, they're sending us our author copies, but, like,
we're in Canada.
We're in Canada, so getting packages across the border. I literally so I ended work early today, and I was like, I was gonna go out in front to check the mail. I checked the mail 3 times today because I was like, maybe Candlekeep will come today, because I really want to see everyone else's stuff. So
I
bad.
do, yeah.
I want to see it too.
Yeah,
you should show it to us next week.
Yes,
if it comes. That's the thing.
Oh right.
Like, that's because, like, shipping from the U.S. to Canada, there are going to be delays. So I really hope that we get them soon.
Yeah. I'm so excited for it. But if I can, I feel like we've talked a lot about the positive stuff here, and like I'm so happy to hear that. But I do want to dig a little bit into maybe some difficulties or like challenges you faced while working with Wizards of the Coast. Daniel's already alluded to it.
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast has done certain things in the past that have been not great and have caused, a degree of harm. And I'd like to know if there were any particular areas of this that you'd like to talk about that caused you tension or friction or anything like that.
I think we should clarify it was TSR, not Wizards of the Coast.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. No, mine was the same thing that I said before. It was like, struggling with the Asian content that is canon, because Karatur and the show people are mentioned in 5th edition materials. So it was like, do I want to use this or do I not want to use this? Not using it would basically be like, okay, well, I'm coding them as Chinese. People are going to go and look for what's Chinese anyways, right? So if I say that they're show, then I might as well set a good example of what a show character can look like, whether or not they are good or evil. So that was my sort of mental thing, and like, it's like my partner is always like had to deal with so many sort of like breakdowns and be sitting in bed late at night staring at my computer. Our condo is all dark and I'm just like, is this the right thing? Like, is this the move? Like I still have this fear that, I don't think it's fear, this anxiety that there are going to be people who are going to be like, Daniel did this thing. He included this thing that he critiqued in it. But yeah, I think that's my biggest thing. So like, I think it was the hardest part of this is interacting with the existing lore and trying to account for it in a positive way.
It's interesting that you bring up like that fear of how the community will react and like the harm that you might experience personally from it. Mm-hmm. And I can only think like not everyone has to worry about that kind of stuff. And for a lot of writers at Wizards of the Coast, through no fault of their own, mm-hmm. they get to benefit from the privilege of writing in a way such that they don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So, when we talk about these kind of things and we talk about making changes like this, oftentimes it's easy to forget that it comes with inherent built-in risk based on the worlds we happen to live in. And I hope that everyone gets a chance to at least sit down and think about, what that means about who you are and who other people around you might be.
Yeah, it's crazy that the thing that scared me most about working on this as an Asian person was writing an Asian story.
Yeah, that's
right, because I could have played it super safe and did something like, there's a dragon, or no, that's a bad mystery. Let me come up with a mystery on the spot. You could. A face begins appearing in the bookshelves, and every time people begin taking books out of the bookshelves, the avowed, or the people of the library, they take the books out of the bookshelves. There's a pair of eyes that are looking at them every time, and as they begin taking out books, there is just nobody there, and there is this thing or this being that is living in Candlekeep, and like I could have done something like that and played it super safe. Right. Mm-hmm. Also, that plot is actually based on a Chinese folktale. But regardless, like I could have done something super safe, but I did something that was coded extremely Asian. And my biggest fear is like, oh, I'm worried about what white people think,
which is super valid too. Like I absolutely understand where that's coming from, and like it fucking sucks. But also like, it does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of just spin off of that, it is interesting because we do have, people of color, a combination of genders, and it's really interesting where Daniel and I contrast here, right? Because he took, I admire the ability of him going like, I'm doing an Asian adventure here, and I went, I'm not going to put that burden on myself. And I think that's extremely valid on both ends, right? Like being able to have representation and build that into the story and into the adventure and therefore products and canon of Wizards of the Coast and D&D. But it's also, you know, very fun to just be like, yes, I am a diverse person. Like I have, you know, I'm a queer Chinese person who's you know, non-binary and all that stuff, but and disabled. But I'm coming in here not going, I need to write an adventure about this. Like I didn't feel that pressure, which was nice. Where so many times where, you know, if unless I'm, you know, writing for something like Jiangxi, like Blood in the Banquet Hall, where it's just like, yes, I'm writing about being Asian in a space, where, you know, for once I wasn't hired on because I would be able to bring that in, right? Where I wasn't hired to be like, you must be the one to make the queer Asian.
You are chosen.
Right. Like there's this very interesting, and that's what I appreciated about, you know, both Daniel and I being in this book and having drastically different adventures, is that, you know, we're here to both bring Asian stories and to also show that Asian stories don't always look Asian.
Yeah. You're bringing diversity to the diversity.
See, for me, it was like, I was like, this might be my only chance.
Yeah.
I'm going to go like, I'm going to lean in hard on this. Like, cause I think I'm like 99.9% certain that I am the first Chinese person to write a Chinese themed adventure for 5th edition D&D, an official one. Or like a martial arts one for 5th edition. And for me, it was like, regardless of how I think I feel about this, I don't know if I'm going to get another shot. And if if Steve and I have been talking about wanting more Asian stories in D&D, well, I have a shot right now. And I realize that, like, I have this, like, I share this burden with everyone who's on Agents Represent regularly. But, like, I am the one, it's my turn to carry this burden of representation right now. Especially as, like, we are Asians Represent. This is what we do. And I have been, you know, if Wizards hires me, if Wizards asks me to write again, I will insert Asian themes again. See, and I haven't told any of you this, actually. I turned down another Wizards offer in 2020.
Oh, wow.
Not for anything that's out. I turned it down because I literally said, I was like, I don't think this aligns with what I wanted to do, because I couldn't do Asian stuff in it. And that was like, turning that down was like a really hard thing for me, because I wasn't sure if I would get another chance again. Certainly hope I do. But yeah, I was like, I felt that burden. And I felt like it was the right thing to do, at least for me.
Yeah, I really... Oh,
go ahead, Agatha. No, please go.
Oh, I really like this thing that we just touched on, which is the being diverse in our diverse representation, or our representation for diversity, however we want to phrase it. But because, like, for you, Daniel, it seems like what you feel like is you want to write like Chinese stories the way that Chinese people want to be written, specifically for D&D. And I can see that stemming from, like, having to read through Oriental Adventures with Steve, and then also now going through Karator together, like being like, every single time being like, okay, this is how we would do it. And then now you're like,
I have a chance.
I get the chance to do it, and I have to take that chance. Whereas and that's a very specific perspective that is so important. And then I think also for Kiana, that is also very important, to be like, okay, I'm Asian, but don't put me just in like this pigeonhole of like being Asian, right? And like both coming together to like write these different stories is so good.
Yeah, that's why I'm happy that, like, Kiana's story, like, Kiana, you decided to go that route, because I'm like, yeah, we aren't just martial arts. We aren't just like, you know, like chi wielding monks, right? Like, yeah, I made that. But also, like, we are capable of making other things, and because we have all these other experiences.
Yeah. Like, I think this kind of goes to the whole thing of like, everyone sees Asian cultures as homogenous, see Asian experiences as homogenous, and Asian stories as homogenous, and that's not the case here, right? Like, and I wouldn't be someone to come in and do something that Daniel could do because I don't have that background, right? I don't have the historical, archaeological background to it. I don't have, the fact that y'all went through Oriental adventures in Karatur, like. I'm not able to come in and bring that, but I'm able to bring in my own mix of whatever I want. And obviously that is informed by my life experiences, which is then informed by my intersectional identities, right? And like I was very I was very careful to, like, when I was going through, like, just be like, yeah, no ableist language here, no weird misogynistic or racist language here, like, and that just comes naturally to me because I'm someone who doesn't want to see that in something that I'm writing, which may be something more difficult for someone who doesn't experience the same things that I do. So yeah, so I think it's really nice to see, you and I, Daniel, and Brazilian's another East Asian person who's on the in the book as well, Alison Huang, and same deal, like totally different story, and that's cool because we all have different things to contribute to this.
Something I find really interesting, and I've noticed this early on while we're talking about this, is Kiana, when you were kind of summarizing your adventure and whatnot, this idea of like being trapped but trying not to feel trapped and suffering through things that other people might not appreciate and kind of don't talk about. I'm like, this is a very Kiana story. And but when I say that, like, obviously there's a lot that goes in there. Like, a Kiana story is also an Asian story. It is also a story about being disabled. Like, it is a story about being femme presenting and like all this kind of stuff. And it has all of that packed in, even if it's not specifically like chi wielding monks, right? Like,
Yeah.
It can absolutely still be an Asian story. And like, I think, Agatha, to your point, like, that is the beauty, I think, that we're kind of exploring here. It's fucking dope as fuck. Sorry, my words stopped being elegant. I started being just gushing there. So welcome to Steve asking questions.
Welcome to Steve.
That's really, really awesome. I'm sorry to hear about kind of like those struggles and whatnot, but if I can, I'd love to kind of flip it maybe to maybe more of the positives, because I haven't worked with WotC yet, but WotC and Hasbro, of course, have a lot of resources. I'm sure that the situation is a little bit different than publishing indie stuff. Is there maybe like one or two things that you felt was a really positive experience working with Wizards of the Coast?
They let me write in the thing I wanted to write about chi.
Right.
Like, literally the entire, all 7,000 words that I wrote for them, I really just wrote all of that so I could write like 50 words. And I really just wanted to be like, yo, monks aren't the only people who have chi. They can just, in the D&D world, they've just been trained to wield it. And everyone's got chi and it has medicinal use. And that's all I wanted to say. And I just put a whole adventure around it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of working with like Wizards of the Coast and everything, like, I'm hoping that with Candlekeep Mysteries and with the new Ravenloft book and how diverse and new blood these writers are, that we're just part of this movement now towards a more diverse writing pool and ideas and everything that's coming in. And as much as it was difficult, because we are working with a big corporation now, like, working for a big corp publisher is very different than working for small indie publications. And obviously, like I've mentioned before, there's some frustrations in being a new person being brought into the Wizards process. The hope is that our experiences will form better processes and keep going and keep pushing forward for this better, more diverse, more reflective of what D&D can and should be in the future. So yeah, so like, I don't even know if it's less the process and more just like the, hey, like, we are look at us. We're in an official D&D book. That's wild. And as much as that also looks good on our resumes, which it does, it looks really good on resumes to be like, hello, I'm officially published in Wizard of the Coast product. It's also just, we're seeing this movement, and hopefully it's a sustained movement, and hopefully our experiences and adventures and product leads a good precedent for what's to come.
That also means people need to engage with this. People need to talk about how much they love Candlekeep. They need to buy it, or at least be vocal about the things they like about it, because Wizards needs to see that. So that means people need to go and tag Wizards D&D and be like, yo, I love the Truman Show with Kiana.
I'm still so pleasantly surprised with that one review. It's like, this is like Truman Show meets D&D. I'm like, yes, I'm glad someone got that.
Yeah, right. And like, all I needed was a review to be like, I understand what Daniel's doing with these kung fu movie tropes, and he does it in a way that isn't racist. And I was like,
yeah.
Who knew feeling seen is an important part of just living happily?
Right? Like,
who knew?
But it's super...
being validated is amazing.
Well, here's the thing. It's super important for people to go and tell Wizards that you like this thing, and why you like it. I think it's super important, right? It's not like, hey, look, you could really love Candlekeep, but the map of Candlekeep looks fucking bomb, right? I think this book should be sick. I think you also need to talk about, like, I really liked seeing these themes. I really liked seeing these creators. I really liked this format, because I think this format is also far more accessible than any of the other ones. Because, like, if you buy a D&D book, you have to commit to doing a whole story through the whole thing. Whereas in this one, it's just like, look at all these, like, 1 or 2 shots that you can do. Right?
Yeah, and like all of the stat blocks for the stuff is within the pages, like you don't have to flip all the way to an appendix.
And an important thing is that you could play everything in Candlekeep with just the core books.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could play it with just the core books and the basic rules, which I think is great. Like, I would love to see more anthologies like this. I would love to see one. Like, I would love to see them flesh out these different runs. Honestly, if, having read Agatha, we're reading Karator, the campaign setting. Like, I would, a lot of people ask, like, would you want to revive Karator? Well, here's the thing. In 5th edition, and I've been thinking about this since Candlekeep. In 5th edition, Karator is canon. Right? It's canon. It's here, right? And they talk about show in particular, and I think they mentioned choreo. But if I were to do something like this, I think it would be really neat to do something in the Candlekeep format, but set it in one city, in like one Asian city. I would love that.
Oh yeah.
Mostly because you could get an all Asian creative group to not only collaborate on the city details, and you only need to do a single city, right? So this is portable. So for me, the idea is that, like, you can create a single Asian city. It's portable. You can stick it anywhere you want in your homebrew setting, but it's also here, right? You have all your details, all the stuff that is, important. Then you have several adventures, each with different themes. You could have a food-based adventure. You could have an adventure that is like more like Cloak and Daggers. You could have your martial arts adventure. Right? Or you could have your, like, more, like, Chinese drama. Like, you could have that, right? But, like, I would love to see setting books like this, whereas it's not just like this, like, volume of tons and tons of information. I want a whole bunch of adventures from one location. Like,
that's really interesting.
And it doesn't have to be Asian, but that's what I want. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Because, like, one of the things that I've been getting into with my own indie work has been, like, more of the OSR, right? And the hallmarks of the OSR are always, portability and hackability, right? Take this little mechanic from here, or take this setting piece from here and use this system for it, right? Like, that's what I would like to see for, future D&D stuff. I want to see portability. I want to see hackability. Might not be in mechanics, but I would love to see hackability in setting.
think something interesting there is that, you know, if it was an Asian centric city or whatnot, I even think that's too big. I think, like, for example, if it was going to be like an ancient Chinese city and I was going to write a Vietnamese adventure, I think I would be quite uncomfortable in that. I'd want it to be a Vietnamese city where you're doing a Vietnamese adventure, just because I feel like there's enough to like separate the two, or to at least make me comfortable. And I don't think that was necessarily your intent when you said that, but I felt the need to like express that.
Yeah,
I
I know
think,
for sure. Here's the thing, like the the thing with like saying caricature is like obviously that's what we've read, right? That's what we're talking
Yeah.
about. I think that if they were to do it and they wanted Asian themes, heck, they could even take. You know, it'd be really neat if they took a district of Baldur's Gate, and they were like, this one district of Baldur's Gate, and let's get all these creators to write adventures that start in this district of Baldur's Gate, right? A setting that's already very popular. It doesn't have, obviously, it doesn't have to be Asian, but if I were to do something in caricature, which is the reason why I said it, I would do it there. Now, historically, you know, you talk about like your Vietnamese experience, but there's also, you know, my Chinese experience. There's also a lot of overlap historically between, you know,
Absolutely.
Vietnam and China, especially with the diaspora of peoples from China into Vietnam. The Baiyue people from Zhejiang province in China moved to Vietnam and started their own kingdom there after the spring and autumn period, which a lot of people don't know about. So there's like a lot of really cool cultural overlap there too.
Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
I think what could be really interesting, like now I'm really invested in this idea of the city and then like adventures stemming from the city. And because Steve, you did bring up a good point where it's like it would be cool to have like a city where you can have a diverse stories, not just in terms of the types of adventures that you can have in the book, but also, you know, like diverse peoples or groups. And I now I'm just thinking about it like, so if we wanted to be like that, then it should be a portal city, right? Because ports are where different people come and go and like come to settle.
Or an island, right?
An island.
Yeah, or an island, right? What
Why?
what if you made it an island? Like, because the island is the ultimate in portable setting, right? Because if I say, okay, well, here's my pitch. Do y'all know how like many islands are created, like geologically?
Yeah.
Volcanoes.
Yeah, volcanic activity. So volcanoes underwater, they just build up, right? Like Japan, for instance, is like a volcanic. It's like a chain of volcanic islands, right? So what if there was some sort of event, and here's why I think Wizards could do this. What if there was some sort of event where something arose from the sea? It's like an Atlantis thing.
Yeah.
What if there was this event where this thing rose from the sea and either people colonized this, you know, this landmass that nobody had ever been on, or, you know, you set up a little island that was just always there the entire time, right? And it's established into this big network, this trading post where people go. You could have adventures
Right.
about pirates there. You could have like doomsday plots on this island. You could have some really cool stuff. For me, I've always wanted to have an adventure centered around, or a series of adventures settled around an island that had something dormant inside it. In an old campaign setting that I wrote that I will never publish, even though it's like 60,000 words that I would never publish. This is from like my D&D game that went for like D&D games that went for like a decade. There's an island, or a series of islands, and they are the remnants of the homeland of this titan that is underwater. And this titan sits dormant at the bottom of the ocean. It has these chains coming out of its back that hold these islands in place. And the islands kind of swirl with the currents. And I would love to have like, okay, an adventure on each island. And just get a different writer for each one. Make whatever you want. I think that would be so cool.
Fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. that's
Damn.
sick.
Yeah. I'm
Islands
just
of
like,
character.
Right? And I think what I think in my campaign setting, I called it the shifting seas is what I called it.
Ooh.
I think I did art for it too. I'll go find it. I'll go find it. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Go look for it.
So while Daniel's going to find his thing, Kiana,
Project.
his project. Kiana, one question I had for you and Daniel when he's settled, is now that you've kind of worked with WotC, was this your first time working with WotC?
Yeah, this was my first time in a design capacity. I've worked in WotC affiliated streams, but I haven't done design work with them until now.
Okay, so now that you've had like this experience and you've kind of go through the motions, would you consider working with them again?
Yeah, I think I would. Again, like we're seeing hopefully, that there's going to be more adventures and there's going to be more products that are diverse and looking to bring in new stories and perspectives that hopefully isn't too married to canon, as it had, we were kind of told to do whatever we wanted with this one until we have to bring it back down to reality. And yeah, like I think if the right adventure opportunity came to me, or the right writing opportunity came to me, I would take it. I've learned a lot about myself over the year since this has happened, and about the type of stuff I like writing. So it's going to be dependent on what they ask me to do, but I would probably say yes to continuing again.
It's really awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Daniel, how you doing?
I'm just looking through this notebook and I'm getting super nostalgic. So like I'm like, it's like one of my old DM's notebook, and I have like old sketches of like things that I wanted to do in adventures, and old maps and stuff, like little like villages and stuff.
Wow.
I love that.
But yeah, I had like a little thing of my like this world that I did. But
like
yeah,
you're good at drawing maps.
But
Daniel.
like this is what I wanted to do. I wanted.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted like this the idea of like a slumbering entity with all these little islands that are like swirling in the ocean above it, and everything is kind of connected in this like cool meta plot.
If you had seen the Guillermo del Toro exhibition, there is a section where all of his notebooks are actually on display, and Guillermo did put a lot of effort into his notebooks because he wanted them to be something to pass down, to be like, here's a book full of imagination, and whoever so reads it, I hope you get some of that imagination and it spawns even more within you. And I just thought it was so beautiful. And Daniel, when you showed us the images from your notebook, I got a very like Del Toro like feel from it, and it's like a very special magical thing.
I have at this point I have so many notebooks that my current, and most of them, like this notebook is like unfinished. I stopped writing in it, but like now I'm working on this one, and it's got our Dungeons and Asians.
Yeah, stickers.
So cute.
I wish we could go to cons, but yeah, like I think I think it would be. I'll have to talk about this.
That is the best way to start answering a question.
It's not a WotC
Can I
thing.
talk
It's not a
about this?
WotC
And I'm
thing.
like, yeah, tell me.
It's not a WotC thing. I think the Del Toro exhibition was really cool, and it showed that people like to see inside the creative process. I think what would be really neat what would be really cool if somebody, I know that a Canadian museum is doing an exhibition on the history of gaming. And that Dungeons and Asians might be in that exhibition. But I think what would be really cool is if there was like a pop-up gallery, and it was all of the GMs from around the world loaned their GM notebooks to this gallery, and people can go and see their creative process.
Or I feel like this can be done online.
Or if this was what I would love to do is if we did a meet and greet or meet up at a con, whenever that can happen, and everyone brings their GM notebook
and just like
show
share
and tell.
it around.
It's like show and
yeah,
tell.
That's so
my
cute.
my GM notebook contains about 2 bullet points, and it says, "Here's where they start. Here's the secret twist. That's it."
Oh, Steve, are we gonna share your notebook?
No, I don't have like maybe like a whole lot. Like my notes are like pretty sparse. I don't know if you see that.
Oh,
I
So
like
like
Steve's handwriting. First
I like to
time
do
on
multiple
screen.
colors. Like I like a hierarchy of
Yeah.
color on mine.
mine are all in pencil, so like it's layers upon layers of just like notes and notes, and like I'll destroy and create. Yeah, and I just like graphite. I think it looks cool. But before Daniel gets too lost in his nostalgia hole, I'm going to ask him the same question.
Yeah, what was
So
the question?
Daniel, would you, based on everything we've talked about here, I think I like know the answer, but would you work with Wizards of the Coast again?
Yeah, 100%. This is my second time working for WotC. I would 100% work for them again. One of the things that I really like about being a freelancer is that I can work for a variety of companies. And what I like about working for a variety of companies, and of course I have to first acknowledge my privilege of having a day job that allows me to make these decisions. What I like about being able to work for a variety of companies is that each company has their own audience. WotC is obviously the biggest one, but companies like Cobalt Press, they have their own audience who really likes their stuff. I know like Darrington Press, they have their own audience who is really invested in the folks behind Critical Role. Paizo have their own audience who really love Pathfinder and Starfinder. And I would 100% work for WotC again. The project would have the luxury of being able to say, like, I would want to work for a specific project because for me, I'm more interested in furthering Asian representation in stories that we see in this industry. So yeah, if the opportunity arose and they were like, hey, we want you to do this, 100%. I would also love to maybe work on Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
I would love to do that, write lore for cards or things like that. Love to. But yeah, I would 100% work for them again if it aligned with my values.
So
yeah.
to ask explicitly or to clarify, it sounds like you're really committed to just writing a Asian or Chinese centric story. Are you like, is that kind of your mindset? Like, if I get brought back onto another Wizards of the Coast property, 100% I'm going to write another Asian centric story.
100%. Yeah. It might not fit in with the tropes of like a Shaw Brothers film, but it will incorporate aspects of Asian culture, whether it be, Asian coded characters or it be new pieces of lore that I'd like to include. I would love to write some Chinese monsters for 5th edition D&D in an official product, because there are so many cool ones. Today I was actually I was watching this video of another actually Toronto-based sort of analog games creator. Her name's Dana Howell. Y'all should look up Dana Howell. Like Howell as in like woo. But Dana Howell is a miniature painter, and they have this really, really cool take on color. Very neon. It's like imagine Warhammer but synth. And that's Dana Howell. They live in Toronto. But Dana was posted this video about a year as a full-time YouTuber, and they talked about like doing little bits of things at a time, like constantly working instead of pushing for grand goals. Look for daily goals. So for me, this is a long sort of like drawn out story to get to this one point, but I have been working on a Chinese toolkit, a setting toolkit. And like my patrons at Patreon are already kind of in the loop on that. But I just wrote a new setting called the Chiming Cliffs. And it's like, I was talking to Emma actually on the Discord about it last night, but it's like 200 words. And the Chiming Cliffs is a location in Paradise Mountain, which is a part of my setting. And whenever you go to Chiming Cliffs, you hear like the sound of bells. And when you approach the mountain, you see these snakes basking in the sun, and these snakes have wings. Now, these snakes love jade and gold, and these are actually creatures from Chinese folklore. They're called Mingshi, and they're like little snakes that love to eat gold and jade, or they are attracted to it. And this particular set piece, the chiming glyphs, is a symbol of the kingdom of Yue's riches. And if the bells ever cease, then that means economic ruin would befall the kingdom. So I created this tiny little like set piece, and there's a guardian, and he's like a hermit, and they live up atop the mountain, and they tend to these flying snakes, to make sure that they are always happy with the mountain. So I've been working on these like little settings, and I would love to take that creature and put it into 5th edition.
Fuck. Yeah.
Also, there's I've got tons of creatures that are coming for Dungeons and Asians.
Nice. I'm hype.
You released a zine, not recently, like a while ago.
Yeah, so
with a lot of these,
the first 3 zines that I did, like the Denizens of Mountains and Seas, volumes 1 and 2, and then Blades of the Lunar Kingdom, are all previews of content that will be amalgamated into this mega thing that I'm doing.
It's like those were the singles, and then this will be the album. Is that? So
EPs.
Those are my EPs.
So for other people who might just be starting, or like, do you have any tips for people who do want to freelance and stuff, like especially in like? Oh,
Kiana, do you want to start?
Yeah, this is a hard question. This is always a hard question. I also come from a place of privilege, as Daniel said, of being able to have a day job, where freelance is not my paycheck to paycheck thing that I have to do. So I do have freedom that way, and I do come from a very, very unconventional pathway of getting into freelance, where I started off streaming, and then slowly building my Twitter presence, which exploded one day, which we talked about because of my activism, and then just from there kind of branching out into like, let me make my own game on a whim. And then that led to, hey, would you want to write something for me? Which, like, I know that's a lot of luck and connections and all that stuff. And a lot of where this is coming from, I think for me, like when I got into this anthology, because one day I tweeted out to the void in 2019. I think I had to look this up for the Dragon Plus interview. Like, when did I do this? So in 2019, in the summer of 2019, I tweeted, one day I'd love to write I'd love to write for a publisher. And Bill Benham actually happened to be someone who followed me at the time. I was just messaged me on Twitter, and he's one of the associate producers of Wizards. And he was like, "Hey, do you want me to give me a portfolio?" I was like, sure. Just don't mind me as I take 2 hours to compose a portfolio that I don't have yet. Let me put stuff together. Eventually it rolled around until in end of 2019, early 2020, where got the message from Bill again, be like, "Hey, we have a project coming up. Would you be interested in writing for it?" I'm like, "Sure." Huh? And the rest is history. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it for me then comes down to, did I put in the effort to try making my own works? Like Itch.io has such a low threshold for self-publishing. It makes it really easy to get your works out there and to actually write stuff down and to actually go through the effort of polishing it, and making it something that you want to share with people and make it playable and all that stuff. And like most of my self-published stuff is very not like D&D. They're very weird micro RPGs that are extremely feels heavy. And so I just kind of was but I was sharing it, and I was showing that I was developing these skills, and at the same time I was putting in effort to talk to people and to connect with people, and not just because they were potential business people to be with, because that's a shitty way of networking, but like actually investing in what other people are doing and are interested in, and being able to tap into that, because you'll never know where your connections are going to come from and where your job's going to come from, or the next gig. And yeah, like, I mean, and it's a privilege to be able to do that and to be free and picky about what I choose, and also go to conventions, which were a huge part of me getting jobs. Like me working for Sea of Legends for Guildhall Studios was because of going to Big Bad Con in 2019.
Right.
where I was able to go to a meeting like a mixer for specifically designed for people of color, and bless the people, the organizers at Big Bad Con, to connect them with industry people and get them to work with to work together and get those opportunities. And that was one of them for me, was doing Guildhall and doing Sea of Legends. So yeah, so I mean, my only advice I can give really is to make stuff and make meaningful connections, and you'll find your communities, you'll find your stronghold. And sometimes your first freelance is going to be like a friend just be like, hey, you want to like write a scenario for me? I'll pay you money for it. Go, sure. And just building that up for yourself.
I think one of the things to add is when you say meaningful connections, it's also to make authentic connections with people.
Yeah.
Because you also have to be very aware of who you write for or edit for, because your name ultimately goes on that product, and you want to make sure that if, again, you have the privilege that Kiana and I have, you work for a company or an individual, a publisher that aligns with your values, because they will ultimately, that is your body of work, and that is reflective of who you are as an individual. So when you get work down the line, people also want to see that you align with people who at least share some of your, share your values, or at least working towards those values. Like, what's really interesting, Kiana? Your D&D thing about the summer of 2019 was also mine.
Oh.
So my story actually starts with you. Whether or not you remember this.
Oh boy.
So we were at a party, you and I.
Yep, I do remember this.
We were at a party at Gen Con 2019.
Yep.
And I had already kind of worked as a writer prior to that, but I'll get to that. But this one was my Wizards one. We had a party in 2019, and we were eating fancy food. I remember we were eating deconstructed sushi out of shot glasses.
Yeah, it was so
like super extra, and this was like the Critical Role party.
Yeah, it was the D&D Beyond Critical Role party.
And I don't watch Critical Role. And you introduced me to Matt. And I met, and this was on August 4th. I actually looked back.
That's amazing.
And it was on August 4th. And you introduced me to Matt. And then our mutual friend Ken Davidson actually recently liked a tweet of mine. I think it was Ken or Justin Mohareb, who used to run gaming at Fan Expo Canada, liked a tweet of mine on August 4th, 2019, when I tweeted big Simu Liu energy. And I was like, yo, Watsy, hire me. I'll do Asian shit. And I tweeted that. And that tweet went viral.
Yeah.
Then shortly after I got hired.
Yeah. No,
so
I remember that. Yeah.
So one method was to be loud. Another method is to join communities. Obviously, Unbreakable is a big one. That's where Steve, you got your start as a writer through Unbreakable, right?
Heck yeah.
There are projects who are looking for people who have ideas, because names also sell things, right? But ideas are also important, and there are projects like Unbreakable that value ideas over names, and they want to put out a quality product behind the Unbreakable brand. So unbreakablerpg.com, we would be remiss if we didn't say that. Go check it out. They're putting out 4 books this year, and they're also looking for new authors, editors, and artists all the time. Check that out. There are other organizations that are also great. I got my start through the IGDN. So the IGDN is the Indie Game Developer Network. And they're a professional network. It's a membership-based one. It's like $100 a year. I realize that is a fair amount of money for some people. But I had the privilege of paying $100 a year to join this network. And it's where I did a lot of my professional networking. And I got my first gig through it. There was an email that went out to all members, and it was like, hey, looking for an Asian sensitivity reader with very explicitly said experience in historical East Asia. And I said, hey, historical China, historical Japan, I can do this. And I got hired. It ultimately ended up being a really shitty gig. But it's how I got my start. And I got paid more than I ever thought I'd get paid on that gig. And I reinvested that money into my own game design work and into other people and into Asians Represent. And I got my big start there. But join professional networks like the Indie Game Design Network. go to unbreakablerpg.com. Be a presence on social media. Now, that isn't to say, tweet constantly and shout out at wizards all the time. That isn't to say that. But talk to people, have genuine conversations with people, join, the discourse when you have something meaningful to say, because people keep an eye on that, right? People are always watching out. Now on Twitter, there's, also, a lot of people who are like, hey, I'm looking for an artist. Share your portfolio, right? Share your work in general. Like, who's one person who who's in our chat right now? Mia Mercury. Shout out to Mia Mercury Art, right? I remember when we first interacted on Twitter and Mia was just starting to do like digital paintings, and now Mia's just constantly sharing their work, right? And out of that, you get commissions, right? Like I also produce my own work, and producing my own work has been a really great exercise in having complete creative control. Things like a Patreon are also really great. I have a small Patreon that I really enjoy. I don't advertise it a lot, but I have a Patreon, and that, keeps me accountable to my creative projects, and it allows me to just work on what I want to work on and not have to worry if this was my only thing, not have to worry about, taking other freelance gigs, right? The Patreon has allowed me to create independently. So to sum it up, network in meaningful ways. Be authentic and align yourself with people who share your values. And this isn't just for TTRPGs. This is just for life, right? This is why, like Agatha, Steve, Amara, Jade, and I have stuck together this long, because, while we all have the three of us right here, like Steve, Agatha, myself, we all have different personalities, right? But our values all align, and we might disagree on things, and we have disagreed on things, but there's this mutual respect that we share with one another, and that's really important for working, as a professional in this industry. So aligning yourself with people who, share your values, but also like creating independently, like Kiana said, super important. Putting yourself out there, even if it's not good. That's the thing.
Yeah, and like I said, like the threshold for self-publishing at this day and age is the lowest it's ever been, right? There are so many resources out there to get started on, game design, for doing, layout if you're interested in doing that, how to publish and market your stuff. And it's also really important to note that, like, collaborating with other people that you enjoy collaborating with is just as valuable as doing freelance stuff, because it's teaching you the skills of how do you work with other people for TTRPG stuff, and in general, and it's helping you to provide that teamwork and that type of skill set for development, which is super key. Probably half my projects now are collab works on my Itch.io page, because that's it's super valuable. And yeah, like just it all of this comes together, right? Where you're trying to work with the people that you want to work with, and that you want your name to be with and attached to showcase your values and your creative vision and all that stuff. Yeah, so like don't aim for Wizards day one, right?
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. As much as someone may dream of it, unfortunately, you just don't kick in the door and go, hello, hire me.
But also don't think that Wizards is a mark of success.
Exactly. Well. Like there's so many, like, again, like so much of my body of work comes to Sea of Legends now, which is the extremely successful Kickstarter. And now my work is going to be like in this big board game that's being shipped out now. Like, that's incredible. And like, yeah, don't see freelancing as like I must work for this person to be seen successful.
Yeah,
your success comes from being able to do the work that you want to do, and getting paid for it,
and putting out work that is meaningful to you.
Yeah.
I know it's a really big business term, but I really resonate with you saying align your goals with your values. Mm-hmm. And the reason I like that is because for me, I'm a very like visual person, and I think about, you have your core moral values, you kind of know what your goals are, and if you draw the line, the trajectory might not be Wizards of the Coast, and like that, I think you both are saying is completely valid and not for everyone. And, you know, it might cost, if you try to get your endpoint at Wizards of the Coast, you might end up making a bend that you actually are ultimately unhappy with.
Yeah,
so I think that's like truly great advice.
And it's also like, if here's the thing, if you want to do a certain kind of work, do that kind of work. So for instance, like, I get people ask me all the time to do cultural consulting for stuff that I am not, like, I am qualified for on paper, but in my heart, I know I shouldn't be doing. Right? There are people who like the first cultural. Okay, no, Agatha and I actually worked on a very tiny project. 2018. I don't know if you even remember this, Agatha. It was for Bree. I remembered it because yeah, it's like a while. It was like a little zine. I don't know if it ever got released, but that was my first ever gig, and it was with Agatha actually. The first major project that I worked on was I don't want to slander anybody. Was an Asian campaign setting that was not Chinese, and I was hired for it because the person thought I wasn't Chinese and something else. And me, seeing the $ they offered, stayed on the project. Now, that is something I don't recommend because that caused me a lot of emotional turmoil. I withdrew from the project, and I was actually like, I can't do this anymore. But from day one, I was also like, you have to hire somebody with expertise and lived experience from this part of the world. I will work as a developmental editor for the 5th edition D&D rule set on this. So at least I did that. I'm proud that I did that. But you also have to make sure that you work on projects that align with what you ultimately want to do. So if you want to be a cultural consultant, right, and your expertise is on, you know, Chinese culture, whatever, right? Work on Chinese projects. Produce Chinese content. Don't work on things that do not align with your ultimate goal or what you are passionate about, just like Steve said. So literally think of yourself as a brand. And this goes way back to what we were talking about at Session Zero Con on that panel.
Yeah. Anyways,
by the way, that was a great panel.
Oh my goodness. Oh, more Session Zeros, please.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, I think we are at time. I wish we could keep talking because these are amazing pieces of advice, and like I just want to dig in and just hear more about it, but maybe for a different wrap up or whatnot. To close things off, I'm sure a lot of our viewers, Kiana, they know you, but if they don't, how can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at Kiana S. I tweet about basically everything I do over there. And that includes stuff like Candlekeep, but that also includes my, my streams and also my work in terms of like safety stuff or in terms of just advocacy or anything else. Again, Twitter, best place to find me. Is definitely and a lot of the times I pop up here. I just appear once in a while and go, hey, let me talk.
Hey, what up?
And it's always a fucking treat. It's always a treat. I love it.
Yep.
So I either come in and I go, hey, let me talk, or hey, let me be an empress. And
Kiana, we're gonna have to, Kiana, we have to talk about what Empress Josha will do because Steve did a thing.
I did
a
thing
thing
on
on the next
thing.
Dungeons and Dragons that we haven't put out yet. But Steve did a thing that
okay,
the
we're gonna
Empress,
have a chat.
The Empress is not gonna fucking like.
I got my own Daniel hold his brain moment while we recorded.
Yeah, I was like,
I was shook.
I was shook, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, afterwards, I was like, I gotta talk to Kiana.
Yeah, no. Daniel and I do collaborate on what happens in Dungeons and Asian with the Empress, because that same party, Gen Con 2019.
That I asked you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I'd love to be in Dungeons and Asian. He's like, great. Who do you want to be? I'm like, I want to be hot and evil.
I was like, you want to be the Empress?
What a mood. What a mood.
Yep.
So, yeah.
But
So,
yeah, follow Kiana. She's hot and evil. They are great. You should definitely do that. But also great RPG takes and great advice, obviously. Agatha, Daniel, myself, you can find all of our Twitter handles down below. You've been listening to us talk about Candlekeep Mysteries. Daniel, when does that drop, by the way?
The 16th, next Tuesday. Or if
Oh.
this comes out on YouTube, it comes out on YouTube on Monday, so tomorrow if you're watching it the day of release. But the 16th, it should be out at your local game store. Support your local game store. Please support your local game store. They're having a hard time, so support them. Support your local game store. Maybe also support your local Asian restaurant. Order in. Read Candlekeep.
Make it a whole thing.
Make it a whole thing. And send us a picture.
Night, yeah.
Send us a picture. At AZNS represent on Twitter.
Yeah, tag us in it.
Tag us. I want to look. If you get Candlekeep, tag me in that picture. I want to see that shit.
Daniel's gonna retweet all of them.
I'll retweet all of them. There you go. Agatha said it.
100%. All y'all need to tag it Candlekeep Mysteries.
Ooh.
Show your food and your meal, and we'll just make a trend on Tuesday.
Well, yeah.
Oh
Do you think we could make Candle Eat Mysteries trend on Tuesday?
I mean, let's try.
Weirder things have happened on Twitter.
I want that to happen.
So there we go. You heard it here first. Candle Eat Mysteries. We're gonna make it happen. But hey, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely make sure to smash the buttons that make the social things do the things we want them to do.
Oh my God. If you're watching this on Twitch, hit the follow button. Subscribe if you have the means. On YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell icon to make sure you're notified when a new video goes live. A new video always goes live at youtube.com/AZNS represent every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. That's when this goes live. Next Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/AZNSrep. We're going to be talking about horror games.
I could have sworn that's what I said. Anyways, thanks everyone. Have a great night or whatever time zone you're in. Peace out.
Bye, everyone.